Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to my channel, my Loverlies. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I am so happy you found me. I do still hope that you will like and subscribe before you leave. Become part of the mom family. Mom's got your back, at least where makeup's concerned, and definitely when that makeup is cheap. You picked a great day to come visit. Today is True Love Tuesday, my absolute favorite video to film every single week. I know you guys love these too. I am so in love with them. I just think that they are so very much fun. This week we're talking about Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. They are the first. They're the first Hollywood power couple. They are the first of so many things. They were basically the first movie stars. I mean, they were there at the very, very beginning. They were there before Hollywood was Hollywood. They were there before Hollywood was this big, glamorous, splendiferous kind of thing. They basically built Hollywood. I am so excited to talk about them this week. I hope you guys are excited to learn about them. So, of course, while I tell the love story, I'm going to be doing my makeup. This week, we're doing this really beautiful purple and blue number. I will give you guys a close-up of it. So pretty. My eye is watering like a faucet today, so I really want to show it to you before the rest of it just completely washes away. We're going to be using the BPERFECT Manifest Dream Big palette. This palette was sent to me by one of my amazing viewers. Thank you so much. You know who you are. I cherish this palette. I love it so much. So, if you guys haven't used the BPERFECT formula, they're so good. They are incredibly expensive, but the holiday season is coming up very, very soon. It'll be here before we freaking know it. And usually, BPERFECT has really amazing sales. I know that they had these kind of palettes on sale last year for around $15 a piece, down from like $40 or $45 that they usually are. So if you guys are wanting to try the BPERFECT formula, just wait. The holidays are right around the corner and there's always such amazing sales. So save your money and then we'll talk again closer to Christmas. But this is what the palette looks like. It's a really gorgeous palette. It's mostly neutral with pops of color, but the shimmers in here are really what shine. They're really a fantastic formula. I used this shadow right here today to do a little bit of a spotlight, and then I also have it as my inner corner and brow bone highlight. It is incredibly beautiful. I adore this palette so much. So we're going to use this bad boy today, and we're just going to really dive into it. Now, I probably won't be talking very much about what I'm using in the video, but of course, I will have everything I used in today's video in the description box below, along with the links to all my other socials. So if you guys aren't following me on my other platforms, please make sure you're doing that. I post at least one thing every single day. I try not to let y'all get too awful bored, and I post lots of fun content. So follow me everywhere. You don't want to miss a second of this gorgeous face. Just saying. So Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, like I said, they were the first. So I of course have my little notepad sitting over here off to the side. Guys know my memory is a sieve. I cannot retain information for anything. The older I get, the worse it gets. So I have my little notepad over here to make sure that I don't lie to you. So if I'm staring off in this direction, that's what I'm looking at. Let's get some backstory going on. So, Mary was born Gladys Louise Smith. She was born in Toronto in 1892, and she was a performer from birth, basically. So she was on stage with her mom by age 8. She actually was known as Baby Gladys, and they toured the country. She toured with her mom and her siblings. I believe she had a sister and a brother. By 15, she landed her first role on Broadway, which I thought was incredibly insane. But you got to think, like, this is 1892, guys, not 1992, 1892. This is before pictures. This is before, this is before everything, right? So by 15, she was on Broadway. Broadway was just a baby at this point. Broadway was brand new, and she is basically owning it. And actually, it's on Broadway that they gave her a new name. They said that Gladys Louise Smith was it was too common, and she wanted to get away from being Baby Gladys as well. So on Broadway, Mary Pickford was born. And then you talk about Doug. Now, Douglas, I'm going to call him Doug in this video because Douglas it's not that. It's a cute name, but we're going to call him Doug. So Doug was born Douglas Elton Thomas Ullman. He was born in Denver in 1883. His father abandoned him at the age of 5. Now, I tried to learn a little bit more about what happened or why he disappeared. All it said was he was abandoned. His father abandoned the family when he was 5 years old. And he made his Broadway debut in 1902. So I think he was there maybe a little bit before or maybe a little bit after Mary. But he made his debut in Her Lord and Master. And after that, he married a Rhode Island heiress by the name of Annabeth Sully. And he married her in 1907, and they had his only son, Douglas Jr., who also became a film star as well. And you find that a lot of these stars, their children also go into the business, I assume because it's all they know. But his son did indeed go into films as well. And I just kind of thought it was important for you guys to know a little bit of backstory on them. Now we're going to get to like where they met and the beginning, the real beginning of the love story. I'm going to actually start to do a little bit of makeup now. I get so wrapped up in telling you guys these stories that I almost never, I forget I'm supposed to be doing my makeup. So they met in November of 1915. And they met at a party. Now, at this time, 1915, guys, the movies are still silent, right? There's no color. Movies are black and white. There's no color. Movies are silent. There's no sound. And basically all they were was moving pictures, moving black and white pictures. And if you guys don't know anything about silent films, if you guys would like to learn a little bit about silent films, I really suggest that you look up Charlie Chaplin, because he is like the king of silent films and truly an incredible, funny, emotive, just really great talent. But movies were still silent at this point, and there were only a few real movie stars. Now, it really wasn't considered a profession. Little, kids didn't grow up hoping to be a movie star at this point. Everything is so brand new, and they're really they're pioneers, they're innovators. So Mary was the queen of silent films, guys, the absolute queen. So in 1909 alone, she started over 40 silent films. Can you imagine working that hard? And make sure y'all got a big old glass of sweet tea or a cup of coffee, because I have a feeling today's video is going to be a little bit of a long one. So make sure you have something to keep your whistle wet. So in 1909, 40 films, like in 1 year, she starred in 40 films, which I think is absolutely incredible. The drive of this woman was astounding. And not only did she have drive and work ethic, but she also was she was incredibly smart. She was an incredibly smart woman, and knew how to talk as well. Yeah, 40 films, great negotiator. She was the highest paid actor. Let's take gender out of the question. She was the highest paid actor in Hollywood. She made more than men, like gender equality and equal pay. She wasn't having it. She made money. She knew she was good at what she did. She knew that everybody wanted her, and she capitalized on that because she was smart and because she was such a good negotiator. She ended up getting, she like tripled. They started off paying her some, like a pittance, really, like a teeny tiny little sum. And after she had established her name, and she had established a demand for her time and for her talent. She went to the studio and she said, "This is what I want. You're going to give it to me or I'm going to walk away." And they freaking gave it to her. She very quickly became the highest paid actor in Hollywood. And Doug had just gotten his big break. So she's already kind of pretty much a seasoned veteran when it comes to the Hollywood scene. And in comes Doug. He was hot off of, he had just gotten his big break. He was hot off of Broadway, really just kind of starting to make his rounds. And they meet at a party. They met at a party hosted by, what was her name? Sadie. Yeah, Elsie Janis. Now, if you don't know who Elsie Janis is, definitely I suggest you go look her up. She's incredible as well, but today's story is not about her. So they met at a party hosted by Elsie Janis, and not only that, but they attended this party. They both attended this party with their spouses. So this is a recurring theme as well. Everybody's married, and especially back then, getting married is what you did. You got married very, very young. And I think most of the time, people got married before they knew who they were, knew what they wanted. And I feel like that's why adultery and cheating and things like that are so common back then, especially in the Hollywood scene. You're meeting people, you're finding out more, you're being more adventurous, you're just altogether a little bit more worldly. And marriages were just not built to last right then in that little sphere of the world. They attended this party with both of their spouses, and they just kind of clicked instantly. And a quote from Janice, they fell in love at first sight. Janice said that, I quote, "Mr. Fairbanks and Miss Pickford had become Doug and Mary before, by the time we dragged our weary bodies home." Now, y'all, they worked hard and they played hard. They would party into the wee hours of the morning, drinking and being absolutely glamorous, I'm sure. But they love at absolute first sight. They knew they were going to be together from the very moment they locked eyes onto each other. And that next year, when Doug's mom died, so the next year in 1916, Doug's mom unfortunately passed away, and Mary was right there. Mary was his shoulder to lean on. Mary was his rock. She was the one who pretty much got him through his mother's death, and that basically just locked their relationship in. And by 1917, by the next year, they were having an active affair. And guys, it had everything, because, there were all those morality clauses and things like that. Everything God was, and Christianity and morals and values were a big part, much as they are now, they still are now, but they were a big part in public image, and perception was everything, right? So they're having this affair, but they're both married, right? And so in order to continue to see each other, it had to be very clandestine. It had to be very low-key, under wraps. So they would meet up and they would wear these disguises. They would be like, they invented the big floppy hats and sunglasses, right? Scarves up to their ears, big hats, giant sunglasses, basically couldn't see their faces. And they would meet up with each other and try to spend as much time together as they could. They were active fair. But Mary was very much worried about public image. And like I said, perception is absolutely everything. They needed the public to love them. And in order for the public to love them, they had to pretty much appear to be squeaky clean. So she was terrified and wouldn't divorce her husband, because she was worried about how the divorce would be perceived. She was worried it would hurt her career. And that worry, I think, was very, very valid. Her kind of trademark, a lot of the roles she played very much this innocent, kind of doe-eyed, dreamy, heroine, right? And she was just very, very innocent. All of the roles she played, very feminine, almost childlike in a way. And if you know anything about Mary Pickford, you know that her kind of trademark was those big eyes and the blonde curly hair, the ringlets. She very much was an angel come to life, right? And angels don't get divorced. Angels don't have affairs. She was terrified about what it was going to do to her career. Okay, yeah, wouldn't get a divorce. But in 1918, the government asked both Mary and Douglas to help sell war bonds to help the war effort. Now, World War I is going on. It is in full swing. And they needed to sell war bonds to help raise money for the war effort. So they both agreed, and they went traveling, and they toured all over, putting on shows for the troops and investors and things like that, basically raising money for the war. And during this time, they're of course in very, very close quarters and don't necessarily need an excuse to kind of be together anymore, and their love for each other just grows. They're spending a ton of time together, and during this time they're basically on a press tour. So at every stop they're taking pictures and just being out there. And unfortunately, the more time they spent together, the more they fell in love, and the harder it was to hide the loving, longing glances that they would send to each other. And unfortunately, these loving, longing glances were caught in many, many pictures. And because of that, rumors started to swirl. Guys, people were on it, right? You got to think about the fact that it's wartime. People are looking for any and everything, to any kind of scrap of gossip to distract them from the misery that is life at the moment. And of course, people are going to cling to the fact that maybe two of their absolute favorite stars are maybe doing something wrong, maybe having an affair. It is scandalous, right? And Douglas's wife, finds out about it, and she divorces him. She finds out that they're having an affair. She sees, it's painfully obvious that they're having an affair. And Douglas's wife is not having it. She divorces him and takes custody of their son. Now, yeah, and Mary was terrified that it was going to have a negative effect on her career. Yes, okay. So they did divorce. Sorry. Shh. It's like 2:00 in the morning, guys. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so Doug and his wife divorce shortly thereafter. And it takes a little while for Mary to divorce her husband. She does eventually, but it takes a little while. Before that, though, not only were they this big, powerful couple in Hollywood, but they were also pretty powerful behind the scenes as well. Like I said, Mary was super, super intelligent, very, very smart woman. And because she was so intelligent and curious by nature, I think, as well, she actually was super, super hands-on when it came to behind the scenes things as well. She was into producing, she was into money management, she was into sourcing and things like that. She was just very, very hands-on, and that actually led to Mary and Douglas teaming up with, who did they team up with? Oh, they teamed up with Charlie Chaplin and D.W. Griffith. Big name in old Hollywood. And they actually started their own production company. They started United Artists, and that actually is still around to this day. And the reason that this is such a giant deal is because it was the first time that artists had stood up to the big studios to really kind of take charge and have choices. At this point, stars are basically pawns for the studios. They do what they're told. They go where they're told to go. Basically the studios said jump, and they asked how high. And that gave them no artistic freedom. There was no choosing roles. There was no artistic integrity. They basically just had to do what they were told. And with the rising of United Artists, there came a freedom, there came a sense of artistic expression that they hadn't been able to experience before. And it was the first time. It was the first time that anyone had stood up to the big studios, and they did not like it. Mary finally divorced her husband in 1920. So they started their affair in 1917. Yeah, 1917. In 1920, she finally divorces her husband. And guys, the minute she divorces her husband, they don't waste any time. Literally 3.5 weeks later, they got married. So they got married, yeah, 3.5 weeks after her divorce from her husband was finalized, and they were so happy. But again, Mary is terrified. She's terrified that her career is going to be over. You know, she loves this man, and she's willing to risk it all for him, because, you know, this is her person. But luckily, the fans, the public, eat it up. They absolutely love that their two favorite stars are now a couple. It's kind of like when everybody was so happy when Kristen and Robert got together. It's the same thing. There was so much charisma, and there was so much there, like on screen and, you know, behind the scenes, that you just wanted them to be together. And they finally did that. The fans ate it up, and their popularity only grew. It grew and grew and grew to immeasurable proportions. Yeah, and they loved it. Loving crowds, like people just throngs of loving, adoring fans bombarded them at every single stop of their European honeymoon. They took a pretty long honeymoon, a pretty extravagant honeymoon in Europe, and at every stop of the way, there were throngs and throngs of people just waiting just to say hi, to see the newlywed couple, and just basically wish them well. As soon as their honeymoon was over, they returned to Hollywood and set up house. And the thing that I thought was so fun is they're the ones that basically built the Hollywood Hills. So, you know, everybody who is anybody owns a home in the Hollywood Hills. My eyes are watering so bad today, guys. Everybody who's anybody owns a home in the Hollywood Hills, right? And the thing about it is they were the first ones to make their home in the Hollywood Hills. At the time that they bought their first house, nobody lived there. It was a very unfashionable and very unglamorous kind of place. And they saw the potential there when nobody else did. So they actually purchased a hunting lodge, a very small older hunting lodge in the Hollywood Hills, and during the course of their life together, actually turned it into a 25 room sprawling mansion. And they actually named it, what did they name it? Fairford? What was it called? Pickfair. They named it Pickfair Estate. Guys, I told you, my brain is a sieve. So they named it Pickfair. Pickfair Estate. They had stables. It was a sprawling estate. Supremely gorgeous. And now I'm sure is worth so much money. It's insane. But they were actually the first people. They built the first in-ground swimming pool in Los Angeles, which I thought was insane. Like, what? But they did. They owned the first in-ground swimming pool in LA. And they turned this hunting lodge into such a beautiful and glamorous estate that they had everybody wanted an invitation to the estate, right? They basically were like the Godfather of Hollywood, right? So if they invited you to the estate, that meant that you had their stamp of approval. That meant that you were accepted. That meant that you belonged, right? So everybody and their mama begged for invitations to the estate. And even Joan Crawford actually married, I think she married Douglas Jr. And even she had to wait over 6 months to get her first invitation to the estate. That's how busy they were. Yeah, they had visitors like F. Scott Fitzgerald, Amelia Earhart. They had visitors like Albert Einstein. It was really just insane. It was a status symbol to be able to say, well, I was invited to Fairbanks Estate. Was it Fairbanks? Pickfair Estate. Everybody was just clamoring for an invitation. So like I said, they were the first people to have an in-ground swimming pool. And not only this, guys, but these people were so much in love that for the entirety of the first 7 years of their marriage, they never, not once, spent a night apart. They made sure that their relationship was the most important thing in their life, and it showed. It really, people say that when you were around them or near them, or when you witnessed their genuine love and affection for each other, you couldn't help but smile. You couldn't help but feel the love, right? So for the first 7 years of their lives together, they didn't spend not a single night apart. Could you imagine never spending a single night apart from your significant other for 7 full years? Well, I mean, I can't. I don't. My husband's up my hiney 24/7. He would say that I'm the one up his, but we don't ever get time apart. It's okay. I love him very much. But not a night, not a single night in 7 years. And eventually, when work did pull them apart, because it did indeed eventually, work calls, duty calls, and they eventually did have to travel for work. When they would part, they would send each other the sweetest notes, letters and notes and gifts, just to let each other know that they were thinking of the other one. Guys know I can't talk and do my cut crease at the same time. But they would send notes and letters just to kind of let the other one know that they were thinking of them, and just kind of keeping the love alive, But alas, sadly, all good things must come to an end. Time is going on. Sweet, romantic declarations, beautiful notes. They actually gave each other nicknames. Mary called Doug Duber, and Doug called Mary Hipper, which I thought was so cute. I don't know if I'd like my husband called me Hipper. It sounds a little close to hippo, but she was very slim, so I guess she didn't have to worry about it. My husband's not calling me Hipper. But alas, all good things have to come to an end. And the times are changing. Things, especially where technology is concerned, things change rapidly. Once advances are made, things usually change pretty quickly. And silent films, as we know, didn't last for forever. And pretty soon, sound came to movies. And with that, both Doug and Mary found it difficult to adjust. They found it really difficult to I don't know, they were used to doing things one way, and now they have to do them another. They just found it really, really hard to adjust to having to speak in movies. And Doug actually said, when Doug never liked the talk, and they called them talkies, right? So the movies with sound were called talkies. And Doug never did like the talkies. He thought, he akined his acting to ballet. He said that what he did in silent films was very much a dance. You had to, every emotion, every feeling had to be displayed in movement, right? Everything had to be had to flow and be. There was an art to it, right? And though there is an art to acting as we know it now, back then it was about body. It was about body language. And he akined it very much to ballet. And he said with the addition of sound, that it just it took the magic away for him. And he just took a step back and really just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And in Mary's case, she actually was able to, she got a role in, what was it? I think they were both in one movie together, and I think it was called The Taming of the Shrew. And actually it went over pretty well. It was well received. But for her, like I said, her trademark had been, being very almost childlike and very angelic. And at this point, guys, time is moving on. She's getting a little bit older. And people just couldn't deal with the fact that their very childlike, angelic movie star was a full-grown woman. Like, they couldn't deal with her actually growing up. And by this time, she's almost 40 years old. And, I mean, there's pretty much no hiding the fact that she is not a child anymore. So their popularity faded pretty quickly after sound came to movies. And they found other things to do, basically. Doug actually, like I said, they started United Artists, and Doug actually, he started the Academy Awards, but I'm trying to figure out where I wrote it down at. So Doug started actually presented for the Academy Awards, and he was actually the presenter at the very first Oscars, and he actually, I think he handed out over 15 Oscars that night, and he just kind of took a step away from Hollywood in general, and he focused on traveling and seeing the world and really just kind of living his life, right? I think he's around 50 at this point. He is, he's just enjoying his golden years. And with Mary, I've already said, she was very hands-on behind the scenes, and she just kind of dove deeper into that. She dove into producing and really just kind of being behind the scenes. She actually even started mentoring. She was actually a mentor to a very young Shirley Temple. So she passed on her wisdom to the next generation of actors, and just kind of stayed behind the scenes. She continued to be very well loved and very well thought of in the Hollywood community, but she didn't like to travel. And I think this is where things really started to kind of break apart for them. Because, like I said, Doug traveled, and he traveled alone. Because she didn't like to travel. She liked to be home. She liked to be where she was comfortable, and I understand that. But he had nothing to do, so he just kind of picked up and left. And I think that space, like we had said earlier, they were very, very accustomed to not being apart. So when he starts kind of roaming and doing his own thing, infidelity starts to happen. And she is in Hollywood doing her own thing, mentoring the next generation. And he is out traveling the world, seeing all of these new sights and experiencing all of these new things. And he becomes unfaithful. And because Doug was look how pretty that is. Look how gorgeous that is. And because Doug was he was a very jealous man, a very possessive man. And guilt breeds resentment, right? So because he's doing it, she must be doing it as well. And he had been having affairs on the road. And he would get home and he would accuse her of having an affair, and she didn't, but she got tired of being told she was doing something she wasn't doing, so she just went ahead and she did it. And she was very spiteful about it, because she made sure that Doug walked in on one of her and one of her co-stars kind of canoodling, and he absolutely blew up, and they both started having affairs in earnest. Then they both were like, oh, well, you can do it, I can do it too, let's see who does it better. So they both had they had numerous affairs, and this was basically the beginning of the end for them. And yeah, he had accused Mary of having affairs while having affairs of his own, many affairs of his own, for years beforehand. Mary ended up filing for divorce in 1933. The divorce was finalized in 1936. And they never stopped loving each other. And this is the thing. I'm going to pause the story for just a second because I want you guys to see how incredible this shimmer is. I'm going to dip into the shade right here. This is called Journey. I'm just going to use my finger. I want you to see how pretty it is on the finger. And I'm just going to tap it onto that blue that I laid down. And it just gives the most beautiful mermaid, metallic, chameleon effect to the lid. It's just an incredible, incredible shade. Super, super metallic, really reflective. Just gorgeous. I had to give that shade just a moment. It is stunning. Oh, I love it so much. So it was over. And like I said, they never stopped loving each other. They never stopped talking or, wishing that things had gone differently. But unfortunately, they just couldn't make it work. They did try to get back together, I think a few times. They tried to rekindle things, but they just couldn't make it work, and they ended up just calling it quits. And Doug got remarried. They both actually remarried. Doug remarried first, though. He married his mistress. So the lady that had been his traveling companion, he ended up marrying. Her name was Lady Sylvia Ashley. And after they got married, they continued to travel extensively. They went all over the place. They went to the Middle East and China, all these things. But unfortunately, his health started to decline very, very rapidly after he divorced Mary. And 3 short years later, he ended up dying from a heart attack in 1939. Yeah, the divorce was finalized in 1936, and he died in 1939, 3 years after, at the age of 56 due to complications from a heart attack. Mary eventually married her another fellow actor named Buddy Rogers, and by all accounts, Buddy was a really, really great guy. He was devoted to her. He was really, really good to her. And they had a really great marriage. But at this point, I think something snapped in Mary's brain, and she just shut off, really. Before that happened, like I said, she became a really active member in the Hollywood community, continued to mentor young actors, and they ended up adopting 2 children. They adopted a boy and a girl. The girl was named Roxanne, and the boy was named Ronald. They adopted them in the early 40s, but they were not good parents. And I think because basically they just didn't know how to be parents. I don't think it was malicious or anything intentional. I just don't think that they were meant to be parents. I don't think Mary was meant to be a mother. And unfortunately, both of the children ended up spending a lot of their childhood locked away in boarding schools. I couldn't find out too awful much about the children, but it just said they were not great parents, and they did not spend very much time with their children at all. Just kind of sent them off to boarding school and let other people raise them. But shortly after this, Mary kind of like, she just withdrew. Events, of course, were still held at Pickford. They still had a bunch of charity events and things like that. Mary was very philanthropic, heavily involved in philanthropy. She was very giving. She helped to raise money for a lot of good causes. But I think she was just done. She was done with Hollywood. She was basically done with life at this point, and she just kind of withdrew to her bedroom. There's a reason. I skipped it, but there's a reason. So Mary's mother died, and when Mary's mother died, I don't know what year it was. Mary died, yeah, continued to live at Pickford. All of her siblings had passed away. Her mother died, and she was the last surviving member of her family. And I think that's one of the reasons she adopted those children, was to kind of feel like she had something to kind of leave behind. I think she wanted to feel like she had at least some kind of family left, but apparently it didn't do the trick, because after her mother died, she ended up falling into a pretty big depression. And as a result of this, her mother died and she turned into an alcoholic. She turned to drinking as a way to cope with the pain that she was feeling. And guys, we all know how that kind of works out. Drinking, drugs, anything like that is never the answer. And it's definitely not a healthy thing to do. And she turned into a raging alcoholic. Like I said, she was still involved in Hollywood, but at this point, she just kind of went into her room and didn't come out again. She would talk to people and conduct her business via phone. She had a phone next to her bed, and she was on it constantly, but she didn't get out of bed. She didn't leave her bedroom. And even when, she retreated from the world and holed up in her bedroom, even when she received an honorary Academy Award in 1976, she made them come. She made them come to her. Actually, a TV and camera crew actually came to Pickford and set up in her bedroom and filmed her from her bed. And she just, no F's were given anymore. She pretty much fell into the bottle and was never able to climb out again. That is so pretty. She was never able to climb out again. Buddy was very, very good for her, though. He was very, very good to her. Buddy stayed loyal to her and took care of her throughout all of this. And he was her sole caregiver. And even to her dying day, Buddy was there to take care of her. Now, when she retreated from the world, like I said, events and things were still held at Pickford, and Buddy would actually give tours of the estate. You definitely don't want it to go to waste. It's this beautiful, beautiful mansion. And everybody still loves them, right? Everybody still loves Doug and Mary. So people would come and tour the estate, and he gave tours of the estate well through the 60s. But in 1979, Mary died due to complications from a cerebral hemorrhage, and that's pretty much the end of it. Like I said, Douglas founded the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and he hosted the first Academy Awards, and he handed out, like I said, 14 Oscars that night. And I think that is why she received an honorary Academy Award. But I think this kind of sums things up so well. So this is an excerpt from one of the letters that Doug wrote to Mary during a time where they were away from each other. And I'm going to read it to you because I think it's so sweet and so incredibly romantic. I just kind of wanted to finish this eye up really, really quickly. My eyes are watering. So bad. There is no amount of allergy medication that is helping. Okay, so that's what we look like so far. Really, really pretty. So here's the excerpt from his letter. It says, "Oh, I am simply wild about you. I feel positively sure that no man could love a woman more than I love you. You have completely taken possession of me. I just cannot live without you." I thought it was so incredibly sweet and so incredibly poetic and pretty and almost like prophetic, I think, because after they divorced, he really didn't live that much longer after they weren't together. So he didn't lie when he said he couldn't live without her. 3 years after everything was finalized and there was no hope of them being together again, he just kind of gave up. I don't think his heart could take not being with her anymore. And very shortly after, she tried to continue to live her life, but I don't think she was ever able to recapture that happiness. She was never able to recapture the joy that they had found together. And I think that they just they lost the will to live. And it's very, very sad. But guys, that is today's video. That is today's story. Before today's story, did you guys know about Douglas and Mary? Had you guys heard of them before? If you guys have, please let me know in the comments below what is your favorite either Douglas or Mary picture. I would love to know. As always, guys, no filters, no edits, no fancy lighting. It's just me sitting in front of my camera, playing with some makeup, hoping you guys are enjoying the story that I'm telling. I will, of course, again, list everything I used in today's video in the description box below, and I will be posting finished pictures over on Facebook and Instagram. The links for both of those will be in the description box as well. I always think it's a little bit easier to really get a feel for the eye look in a picture, because you can kind of zoom in and really focus on everything that's going on. If you guys have any questions or anything about today's video or about the eye look that I did, just let me know in the comments and I will, of course, get back to you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's story as much as I enjoyed telling it. I thought that this one was a really, really beautiful story. And I thought that oh, another fun fact is both Douglas and Mary were the absolute first couple. They were the first stars to put their hands and feet into the cement in front of, is it Grauman's Chinese theater. They were the very first. They were the very first to have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I thought that was a really, really fun fact as well. Guys, I love you so, so very much. I will, of course, be finishing this look and posting pictures. And until next time, my beautiful lovelies, stay safe, take care of yourselves, fall in love, be in love, enjoy love. And remember, I forgot my outro. And remember, you're important. Bye.